The galaxy was quiet, or so everyone believed. Across thousands of star systems, hundreds of alien species lived under the rule of the Galactic Concordance. They called it peace. No wars had been fought in over 300 years. When disputes arose between worlds, diplomats talked. Sanctions were applied. Trade routes were closed. Problems were solved with words and economic pressure, never with weapons. The species of the Concordance had evolved on gentle worlds. Their planets had light gravity, stable weather, and few dangerous creatures. They had never needed to become warriors. Their bodies were fragile by comparison to what nature could produce. Their minds recoiled at the thought of violence. War was something primitive species did, something barbaric and unnecessary. High Chancellor Orvan, leader of the Concordance, often spoke of their enlightened civilization. His species, the Ethran, resembled large birds with colorful feathers and wise eyes. He would stand before the Grand Assembly and remind everyone that they had moved beyond the savage past. The galaxy was civilized now, safe, orderly. But on the edges of Concordance space, something was changing. The Kryn Dominion had always been aggressive. They were a reptilian species, tall and powerful, with scales that shimmered like metal and eyes that burned with ambition. For decades, they had pushed against the boundaries of acceptable behavior. They demanded more territory. They refused to follow certain trade laws, but they had never crossed the line into open warfare. Then they found something that changed everything. On a dead world in an abandoned system, Kryn explorers discovered an ancient facility. Inside were weapons from a civilization that had died out millions of years ago. Energy cannons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand any known force, ships that moved faster than anything the Concordance had ever built. The Kryn began to test these weapons, first on asteroids, then on uninhabited moons, then on the mining colonies of species too weak to fight back. The Concordance sent diplomats. They sent strongly worded messages. They threatened sanctions. The Kryn laughed and continued their expansion. Within 6 months, they had conquered 4 star systems. Small ones with limited populations, but the pattern was clear. The Kryn were building an empire and no one was stopping them. Then they turned their attention to Talveen Prime. The Talveen were an amphibious species, gentle and philosophical. Their world was covered in vast oceans and island chains. They were artists, scientists, and teachers. Their population of 4 billion had never known war. They had no military, only a small defense force meant to redirect asteroids and rescue ships in distress. When the Kryn fleet arrived in orbit, the Talveen had no chance. 23 warships surrounded their planet. The Kryn commander Zral sent a simple message: surrender and become servants of the Dominion or face destruction. The Talveen government refused. They sent desperate pleas to the Concordance, begging for help. The Grand Assembly convened an emergency session. They debated for 3 days. Some argued for intervention. Others said the Concordance had no military capable of fighting the Kryn. Still others worried that taking military action would compromise their principles of peace. In the end, they voted to do nothing. They would impose the strongest economic sanctions in Concordance history. They would cut all ties with the Kryn. They would condemn their actions in the strongest possible terms, but they would not send ships. They would not fight. On Talveen Prime, the bombardment began. Miran was a scientist, specializing in long-range communications. She worked in a research facility on one of the larger islands, studying the old survey probes that had been sent out centuries ago by various species. Her work was normally quiet and theoretical. She analyzed signals from dead satellites and tried to reconstruct lost data. But as the Kryn ships began firing on her world, as she watched cities burn and heard the screams of the dying through every communication channel, something changed in her. She went through her archives frantically, searching for anything that might help, any species that might have weapons, any civilization that might intervene where the Concordance would not. That was when she found the file on Earth. It had been flagged with a red warning marker. The survey probe had visited the system 200 years ago, doing a basic scan before moving on. The report was brief but chilling. The third planet was listed as a death world, the highest danger classification. Gravity nearly twice what most species could tolerate. Extreme weather systems. Thousands of species competing for survival. Many of them apex predators. The probe had detected radio signals suggesting intelligent life. But the recommendation was clear. Avoid contact. Any species that evolved on such a world would be dangerous beyond measure. Myron stared at the coordinates. Outside, another explosion rocked the building. Her people had maybe a week before the Kryn finished their bombardment and began landing troops. The civilized galaxy had abandoned them. She made her decision. Working through the night, she compiled a message in every language her computer could generate. She kept it simple, desperate, honest, to anyone listening. My name is Miran. My people are called the Talveen. We are dying. Our world is under attack. We have no weapons. No way to defend ourselves. The other civilized species will not help us. I found your coordinates in an old survey file. I do not know if you can hear this. I do not know if you will understand. But we are 4 billion people facing extinction. If you have any mercy, any compassion, please help us. These are our coordinates. We have days left, maybe less, please. She attached everything she had, star maps, information about the Kryn, pictures of her people, her world. Then she aimed the most powerful transmitter on Talveen Prime toward the Sol system and sent the message at maximum power. She did not know if anyone would receive it. She did not know if the inhabitants of that death world were even capable of space travel. She did not know if they would care about the fate of strangers on the other side of the galaxy, but she had tried. That was all she could do. Miran sat back in her chair, listening to the distant sounds of destruction, and waited for the end. The signal reached Earth's orbital defense network on a Tuesday morning. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park was on duty at the monitoring station when the computers began screaming alerts. She had been tracking routine satellite traffic and space debris when suddenly every screen lit up with warnings. Unknown transmission. Alien origin. Repeating message in multiple languages. She froze for exactly 3 seconds. Then her training kicked in and she hit the emergency protocol button. Within 20 minutes, every major government on Earth knew that humanity was not alone in the universe. Within 2 hours, linguistic experts had decoded the message. Within 4 hours, the United Earth government was in emergency session. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every nation sat in their designated seats, but no one was following normal procedures. Everyone was talking at once. The president of the UEG, an elderly woman named Catherine Mills, had to bang her gavel repeatedly to restore order. "We have confirmed the message is genuine," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "An alien species is under attack and asking for help. The question before us is simple. What do we do?" The chamber erupted again. Some representatives argued that this could be a trick. Others said humanity had no business interfering in alien conflicts. Still others pointed out that Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. They had 12 warships capable of interstellar journeys. That was not an invasion force. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood up. She was a broad-shouldered woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from a career spent in dangerous places. She had commanded the first human mission to Alpha Centauri and had overseen the construction of Earth's small but growing fleet. "With respect, Madam President, I think we are overcomplicating this," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. Someone sent a distress call. "They are dying." They asked for help. Everything else is noise. A representative from the European Union stood up. "Admiral, we do not know these aliens. We do not know their enemies. We could be starting a war that destroys our entire species." Vasquez nodded. "That is possible. But let me ask you something. If you were drowning and you screamed for help, would you want the person who heard you to debate the politics of rescue? Or would you want them to jump in the water?" The room fell silent. President Mills looked around at the assembled representatives. "We need a vote. All in favor of sending aid to the Talveen people?" The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. By the end of the day, orders were sent to the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 12 warships were pulled from patrol duties and reassigned. Their mission was simple. Travel to the coordinates provided, assess the situation, render aid if possible. Admiral Vasquez would command the fleet personally. Captain Marcus Chen was eating dinner with his family when he received the alert. His communicator buzzed, displaying the priority code that meant immediate deployment. His wife Anna saw his expression change and knew before he said anything. "How long?" she asked quietly. "I leave in 6 hours," Marcus said. "I do not know when I will be back." His daughter Sophia was 9 years old. She hugged him tightly. "Be safe, Papa." Marcus kissed the top of her head. always. 4 hours later, he was aboard the UEG Indomitable, a heavy cruiser that served as the flagship of the fleet. The ship was not elegant. It was a block of armor and weapons, built to survive anything Earth's harsh environment could throw at it. Redundant systems, thick hulls, engines that could run on half power if needed. As the fleet prepared to depart, Marcus stood on the bridge with his senior officers. His second-in-command, Commander James Liu, pulled up the navigation data. "We are looking at a 3-day journey using quantum tunnel drives," James said. "We will exit at the edge of the system to avoid detection." Marcus nodded. "What do we know about the enemy?" "Not much," James admitted. "The message mentioned a species called the Kryn. Reptilian, aggressive, they have superior numbers. Beyond that, we are going in blind." The communications officer, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, spoke up. "Sir, I have been studying the Talveen language from the message. I can communicate with them if needed." "Good work, Lieutenant," Marcus said. He looked around at his crew. They were professionals, veterans of Earth's various conflicts and space operations. But they had never faced aliens before. None of them had. "Listen up," Marcus said. "We are about to do something no humans have ever done. We are going to another species' world to fight their war. I will not lie to you. This could go badly. We might not come back, but someone asked for help and we are answering. That means something. Remember that." The crew nodded. They understood. The fleet departed 6 hours after the vote. 12 ships slipped into quantum tunnels and vanished from Earth space. The journey took 3 days, as predicted. During that time, the crew studied everything they had about the Talveen. Lieutenant Tanaka worked with the linguistics team to master the basic language. The tactical officers analyzed the limited data about Kryn ships. Admiral Vasquez spent most of her time on the bridge, staring at the star maps. She had a bad habit of doubting herself in quiet moments. What if they were too late? What if the Kryn fleet was too strong? What if she was leading these people to their deaths? But then she would remember the voice in the message, the desperation, the fear. Someone had asked for help. That was enough. On the 3rd day, the fleet dropped out of quantum space at the edge of the Talveen system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go silent. The planet was visible even from this distance, surrounded by ships. 23 of them, according to sensors. They were elegant vessels, sleek and curved, nothing like Earth's blocky warships. But what they were doing was unmistakable. They were bombarding the planet. Fires burned across the surface. Debris filled the orbit. Smaller ships, civilian vessels were being hunted down and destroyed as they tried to flee. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, Admiral Vasquez spoke quietly. "Get me a channel to those ships," she said. Lieutenant Tanaka worked her console. "Channel open, Admiral." Vasquez leaned forward. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Government. Attention, Kryn vessels. You will cease your attack on Talveen Prime immediately and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." For a long moment there was no response. Then the communication channel crackled to life. The voice that came through was deep and rasping, filled with amusement. "This is Commander Zral of the Kryn Dominion. Did you just threaten us? Let me see your ships." A moment later his voice came back, now filled with laughter. "Deathworlders. Impossible. Your species should not even have space travel. Surrender now, primitives, or we will add your 12 ships to the debris." Admiral Vasquez looked at Captain Chen. She did not smile, but her eyes were hard. "Captain Chen, transmit the following message to all ships in the fleet." Marcus straightened. "Ready, Admiral." Vasquez spoke clearly. "All ships. Weapons free. Show them what a death world breeds." The human fleet accelerated toward the Kryn formation at full combat speed. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Marcus Chen watched the tactical display light up with target locks. Beside him, Weapons Officer Lieutenant Commander Park had her hands steady on the controls. "Range in 30 seconds, she reported calmly. Commander Zral watched the approaching human ships with amusement. They were charging directly at his fleet. No evasive maneuvers, no attempt at tactical positioning. Just a straight-line attack. It was the kind of mistake young species made when they did not understand real warfare. "Target the lead ship," he ordered. "Destroy it quickly. The others will surrender once they see what we can do." His crew activated the energy shields and powered up their plasma cannons. These weapons had destroyed a dozen Talveen defense stations. They would make short work of primitive Deathworlder ships. The first human ship entered firing range. Fire all forward railguns, Captain Chen ordered. The Indomitable shuddered as 6 railguns fired simultaneously. Tungsten rods, each weighing 3 tons, accelerated to 5% of light speed in less than a second. They crossed the distance to the nearest Kryn ship in the blink of an eye. The Kryn energy shields were designed to disperse energy weapons. They were useless against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten rods punched through the obsidian fang like it was paper. The Kryn ship split in half, its reactor breaching in a flash of blue light. Debris scattered across space. On his bridge, Commander Zral stared at his screens in disbelief. What just happened? They used kinetic weapons, his tactical officer shouted. Our shields cannot stop them. Then evade, Zral roared. All ships evasive patterns. But the Kryn ships were designed for the warfare of the Concordance. Energy weapons at medium range. Shields that could absorb damage. Ships that maneuvered elegantly but slowly. They had never faced an enemy that used mass and velocity as weapons. The human fleet tore into the Kryn formation like wolves among sheep. The UEG Thunderchild launched a spread of missiles, each one tracking a different target. The Kryn point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but the missiles were fast and maneuverable. 3 Kryn ships took direct hits. Their elegant hulls crumpled under the explosions. The UEG Defiant closed to point-blank range with a Kryn cruiser and fired its main cannon. The recoil pushed the human ship backwards, but the shot obliterated the enemy vessel completely, and then the human fighters launched. Each of the larger human ships carried a squadron of small, fast attack craft. They poured out of the launch bays like angry hornets, 12 fighters per ship. Over 100 small craft suddenly swarmed the battlefield. The Kryn had never seen anything like it. In concordant space, artificial intelligence handled most combat operations. Risking living pilots in small, fragile ships was considered barbaric and inefficient. But human pilots were different. They had spent centuries fighting in Earth's skies. They knew how to use speed and agility. They knew how to take risks that computers never would. Lieutenant Rachel Torres piloted her fighter through a cloud of debris, her targeting system locked on a Kryn destroyer. She fired a burst from her plasma cannons, hitting the ship's engine section. The Kryn vessel began to list, its power failing. Splash 1, she called out over the comm. Who else wants some? The Kryn tried to adapt. They focused their fire on the human capital ships, thinking if they destroyed the larger vessels, the fighters would be stranded. Commander Zral personally targeted the Indomitable. All weapons on that flagship, he ordered. Burn it from space. 6 Kryn ships turned their plasma cannons on the Indomitable. The beams of superheated matter converged on the human ship. The Indomitable's armor began to glow. Sections of the hull melted. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Hull breach on decks 7 and 8, someone shouted. Shields at 15%. Captain Chen gripped his command chair. Damage control teams seal those sections. Helm, get us closer to that cruiser, sir. The helmsman looked confused. You heard me. Ramming speed. The Indomitable surged forward, its engines screaming. The crew felt the acceleration pushing them back into their seats. On the view screen, a Kryn cruiser grew larger and larger. At the last second, Chen barked another order. All hands, brace for impact! The Indomitable slammed into the Kryn ship's side at full speed. The sound was deafening even through the vacuum of space. Metal screamed and tore. Both ships spun wildly from the impact. But the Indomitable had been built to withstand Earth's worst. Hurricanes, earthquakes, meteor strikes. Its armor was thick. Its structure was reinforced. It survived. The Kryn cruiser broke apart. On Talveen Prime, Miran watched the battle unfold on her screens. She had almost given up hope. The Kryn had been destroying her world for days. No one was coming to help. Then the human ships appeared. She watched them fight with a ferocity she had never imagined possible. They did not maneuver carefully. They did not worry about damage. They just attacked again and again like they had no fear of death. What are they? Her assistant whispered. Miran shook her head. I do not know. But they came. They actually came. The Talveen defense coordinator, an old male named Tehran, stood beside her. He had been a soldier in his youth, back before the Talveen had abandoned military service. He understood what he was watching. They are warriors, he said quietly. Real warriors. Not like the concordant species who debate and discuss. These people know how to fight. On his flagship, Commander Zral was beginning to panic. He had started the battle with 23 ships. Now he had fewer than 10 still combat-capable. The humans had lost no ships, though several were badly damaged. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are primitives. Deathworlders." His tactical officer looked at him with fear in his eyes. "Commander, maybe that is why they are winning. They evolved fighting. We did not." A human boarding craft latched onto Zral's flagship. He heard the explosion as they breached the hull. Then alarms as human soldiers entered his ship. The Kryn crew tried to fight them off. They had weapons. They had numbers, but they had never trained for close combat. They did not know how to fight in narrow corridors against enemies who moved with terrifying speed. The human Marines wore powered armor that amplified their already formidable strength. They moved through the ship like a force of nature, clearing each deck methodically. Captain Marcus Chen led the boarding team personally. He had left Commander Liu in charge of the Indomitable and taken a squad of Marines to capture the Kryn flagship. If they could take the commander alive, maybe they could end this faster. They fought their way to the bridge. The doors were sealed, but that only slowed them down for a minute. A Marine placed a shaped charge and blew the doors inward. Chen stepped through the smoke, his rifle raised. Commander Zral stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by his cowering crew. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with scales that looked like polished bronze. His eyes were yellow and filled with rage. "You dare board my ship?" he hissed. Chen kept his rifle pointed at the commander's chest. "Your fleet is broken. Your ships are destroyed. Order your remaining vessels to surrender and I will spare your crew." Zral laughed bitterly. "You call us aggressive? You attack like mindless beasts. You fight without honor or restraint." Chen's expression did not change. "We fight to win. We fight to protect people who asked for help. If you want to call that dishonorable, go ahead. But you are beaten." For a long moment, Zral stared at the human. Then slowly he raised his hands. "I surrender," he said quietly. The battle for Talveen Prime was over. Of the 23 Kryn ships, 19 were destroyed. 4 had fled into quantum space, abandoning their commander. The human fleet had taken heavy damage. 3 ships were barely operational. 847 humans were dead or wounded, but the Talveen were safe. Admiral Vasquez broadcast a message to the planet. "This is Admiral Vasquez of the United Earth Government. The siege is broken. You are safe now. We will maintain orbit until you are ready to talk." On Talveen Prime, Miran listened to those words and began to cry. They were tears of relief, of joy, of disbelief. She sent back a message with trembling hands. "You came. You actually came. Who are you?" The response was simple. "We are humans. You asked for help." 3 days after the battle, the first human shuttles landed on Talveen Prime. Miran stood at the landing zone with hundreds of other Talveen, watching the strange craft descend. They were not elegant like Concordant ships. They were blocky and functional, with scorch marks from atmospheric entry. But they settled onto the ground with surprising gentleness. The rear ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. The first human to step out was a woman in a dark blue uniform. She was shorter than most Talveen, but there was something about the way she moved that suggested power. Her skin was darker than the Talveen had expected, a rich brown color. Her eyes swept across the assembled crowd, taking in everything. Admiral Vasquez walked forward and stopped a respectful distance from Miran. The Talveen scientist had been easy to identify. She was the one who sent the message. "Miran?" Vasquez asked in careful Talveen. Miran stepped forward, her legs shaking slightly. Up close, she could see the differences. The human's bones looked thick and heavy. Her muscles were dense. Even her skin looked tougher, marked with small scars. This was a person who had been hurt many times and survived. "Yes," Miran said. "I am Miran. I sent the message. Thank you. Thank you for coming." Vasquez smiled, and it transformed her serious face. "You do not need to thank us. We are glad we could help." Behind Vasquez, more humans were disembarking. Some wore uniforms like the Admiral. Others wore white clothing with red crosses. They carried equipment and supplies. Medical gear, construction tools, food. A human doctor approached an injured Talveen and knelt down. The Talveen pulled back nervously, but the doctor moved slowly, speaking in a gentle voice. Within moments, she was treating the wounds while a translator device helped them communicate. Over the next week, humans and Talveen worked side by side. Human engineers helped repair damaged buildings. Human doctors treated the wounded, learning Talveen biology as they went. Human soldiers provided security while Talveen crews cleared debris. Captain Marcus Chen spent most of his time coordinating the relief effort. One afternoon, he was helping move rubble when Miran approached him. She moved carefully in the heavy gravity boots the humans had provided. Earth's gravity was nearly twice what she was used to. "Captain Chen," she said, "may I ask you something?" Marcus nodded, setting down the piece of broken wall he had been carrying. "Of course, your world," Miran said carefully. "The survey report called it a death world, the highest danger classification. Is that true?" Marcus looked around at his crew. Some of them were lifting debris that would take 3 Talveen to move. Others were working through the heat of the midday sun without complaint. He thought about home, about storms that could level cities, about animals that hunted humans, about diseases and disasters and all the things that made Earth dangerous. "Yes," he said simply, "it is true. But how do you survive?" Miran asked. "How do your people live on such a world?" Marcus smiled slightly. "We adapt. We build stronger. We work together. We never give up. Earth made us tough, but it also made us stubborn." Miran was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "I think maybe that is why you came when no one else would. You understand what it means to fight for survival." Before Marcus could respond, his communicator buzzed. It was his sister, Sarah. She had been chosen as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Concordance. Her message was brief. "Marcus, I am heading to the Concordance homeworld for an emergency session. They want to discuss Earth's intervention. This could get complicated." The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Concordance met on Ethris Prime, a beautiful world of floating cities and gentle winds. Species from hundreds of worlds gathered in the massive council chamber. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the chamber, feeling very small and very out of place. Around her, aliens of every description sat in their designated seats. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and wide. Some had feathers, some had scales, some had skin like hers. But almost all of them were looking at her with a mixture of curiosity and fear. High Chancellor Orvan stood at his podium, his colorful feathers rustling. "Ambassador Chen of Earth, you have been summoned to answer for your species' actions in the Talveen system. Your fleet attacked and destroyed Kryn vessels without Concordance authorization. This is a serious violation of galactic law." Sarah had prepared for this. She had studied Concordance law and culture. She knew what they expected. Apologies, explanations, promises to follow proper procedures in the future. Instead, she looked up at the High Chancellor and spoke clearly. "With respect, Chancellor, I was not aware that dying species needed to fill out paperwork before receiving help." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. No one spoke to the High Chancellor that way. Orvan's feathers flattened against his body, a sign of anger in his species. "You do not understand the complexity of the situation. The Concordance must consider many factors before taking military action." "You mean you must debate while people die," Sarah said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. "The Talveen sent you messages for days. They begged for help. You voted to do nothing, so they sent a message to us, and we came." A representative from the Veltron Collective stood up. The Veltron looked like large insects with iridescent shells. "But Earth is a primitive world. You have barely achieved interstellar travel. You have no right to involve yourselves in galactic affairs." Sarah turned to face the Veltron. "My people have a saying. When someone is drowning, you do not check their credentials before throwing them a rope. You just help. But you used violence." Another representative called out. "You destroyed ships. You killed Kryn soldiers." "Yes," Sarah said simply. "Because they were killing Talveen civilians. Because they refused to stop when we asked. Because sometimes when you face someone who will not listen to words, you need to speak in a language they understand." High Chancellor Orvan raised a hand for silence. "Ambassador Chen, I understand your position, but you must understand ours. The Concordance has maintained peace for 3 centuries by avoiding military conflict. Your species comes from a death world. You are naturally aggressive. We cannot allow such violence to become normal." Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment that mattered. "Chancellor, let me be very clear. We are not asking for your permission. We are not asking for your approval. We came to inform you that Earth and Talveen Prime have formed a mutual defense alliance. If anyone attacks our allies, we will respond. You can accept this or you can try to stop us, but we will not stand by and watch innocent people die because you find war distasteful." The chamber fell completely silent. High Chancellor Orvan stared at the human ambassador for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he made a sound that was close to a laugh. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador Chen," he said. "Perhaps both. Very well. The Concordance recognizes Earth as a sovereign power and acknowledges your alliance with Talveen Prime. But know this, we will be watching your species very carefully." Sarah bowed slightly. "That is all we ask, Chancellor. Watch us. Judge us by our actions, not your fears." As the session ended, several representatives approached Sarah privately. They came from smaller worlds, species that did not have much power in the Concordance. They spoke quietly, carefully. "If our worlds were threatened," one asked, "would Earth help us too?" Sarah thought about what Admiral Vasquez had said. About answering distress calls. About helping those who asked. "Send us a message," she said. "We will come." Back in the Kryn Dominion, Supreme Warlord Krath received the reports from the Talveen system with disbelief. Commander Zral had been captured, 19 ships destroyed, the fleet broken by a species no one had heard of. Krath was larger than Zral, his scales darker and heavier. He had ruled the Dominion for 20 years through strength and ruthless ambition. This defeat was an insult he could not ignore. He called his military commanders together. "How many ships can we mobilize?" 180 warships, Supreme Warlord, his chief admiral replied. "If we pull vessels from all our territories." "Do it," Krath ordered. "We will go to this Earth and show them what happens when you challenge the Dominion. We will burn their death world and teach the galaxy that the Kryn are not to be trifled with." His intelligence officer, a younger Kryn with gray scales, spoke hesitantly. "Supreme Warlord, the analysis of the battle suggests we should exercise caution. The humans fought in ways we did not anticipate." Krath slammed his fist on the table. "They destroyed 19 damaged ships with 12 vessels. We are bringing 180. The mathematics are not complicated." The intelligence officer bowed and said nothing more. Within days, the Kryn began assembling their fleet. It was the largest military force anyone had seen in 300 years. On Talveen Prime, Miran received a warning from her contacts in the Concordance. The Kryn were coming for Earth. She immediately sent a message to Admiral Vasquez. The Admiral read the message and showed it to Captain Chen. "They are coming for us," she said simply. Marcus nodded. "Then we should go home. Our place is defending Earth, not sitting here." Vasquez smiled grimly. "Agreed, let them come to us. They think Earth is just another planet. Time to show them what a death world really means." The Kryn Armada entered the Sol system with absolute confidence. 180 warships dropped out of quantum space near Jupiter's orbit. Supreme Warlord Krath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, and surveyed the primitive system before him. One star, a handful of rocky planets, a death world that had somehow produced spacefaring creatures. "Scan for their fleet," he ordered. His sensors officer worked the controls. "I am detecting 12 vessels in orbit around the third planet. They appear heavily damaged from the previous battle. No other military assets detected." Krath's mouth opened in what his species considered a smile. 12 damaged ships against 180. They should have surrendered when they had the chance. "Set course for Earth. We will broadcast our demands when we are in range." The massive fleet began its journey toward the inner system. It would take several hours to reach Earth at sublight speeds, but Krath was not concerned. Let the humans watch their doom approach. Let them feel fear. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez sat in the command center deep beneath Geneva. Around her, dozens of officers monitored screens showing every angle of the solar system. The Kryn fleet was impossible to miss. "They are not even trying to hide," Commander Liu observed. "They are coming straight for us. Why would they hide?" Vasquez said calmly. "They think they have already won." "Captain Chen, are all assets in position?" Marcus checked his display. "Confirmed, Admiral. Everyone is ready." Vasquez nodded. "Then we wait. Let them come a little closer." As the Kryn fleet passed Mars, Krath finally broadcast his message to Earth. His image appeared on every screen, every device, every display on the planet. His voice was filled with arrogance. "Humans of Earth, I am Supreme Warlord Krath of the Kryn Dominion. You have humiliated us. You have destroyed our ships. You have captured our soldiers. For these crimes you will pay with your world. Surrender now, and I will allow some of you to live as slaves. Resist, and I will burn your planet until nothing remains but ash. You have 1 hour to respond. The broadcast ended. Vasquez looked at her officers. Send him our response. A communications officer opened a channel. Vasquez leaned toward the microphone. Warlord Krath, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez. You came to our home. You threatened our families. You made a very bad mistake. We do not surrender. We do not run. And we do not forgive. You want Earth? Come and take it. She cut the transmission. Krath stared at his screen in disbelief. Then he roared with laughter. They refuse! These Deathworlders actually refuse very well. All ships prepare to enter Earth orbit. We will show them what defiance costs. The Kryn fleet accelerated toward Earth. That was when everything changed. Sensors across the Kryn fleet suddenly screamed warnings. New contacts. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Appearing from every direction. What is happening? Krath demanded. Unknown vessels emerging from the asteroid belt. More contacts near the moon. Additional ships coming from Mars orbit. His sensor officer's voice rose with panic. Supreme Warlord, there are over 300 signatures. Krath grabbed the console. That is impossible. Intelligence said they only had 12 ships. Those were only the ones they let us see, Vasquez said quietly in the command center. Earth had not been idle in the 5 years since achieving faster-than-light travel. The United Earth government had built, and built, and built. Shipyards orbited the moon. Construction facilities floated in the asteroid belt. Assembly stations ringed Mars. They had learned the lessons of their own history. Never assume peace will last. Never let your guard down. Always be ready. The Third Expeditionary Fleet had been bait, damaged ships that made Earth look vulnerable. The real defense force had been hiding, waiting. 89 warships powered up their engines and revealed themselves. 2,000 fighter craft launched from hidden bays. Automated weapon platforms that had been disguised as space debris activated their targeting systems. Defense satellites around Earth locked onto the Kryn fleet. And on the moon, the mass drivers began to fire. These were not weapons, not originally. They were mining tools, designed to launch raw materials from the lunar surface to processing stations in orbit. But during a war, anything can be a weapon. Rocks, simple rocks from the lunar surface, but rocks accelerated to tremendous speeds. Rocks that hit with the force of nuclear weapons. The first volley caught the Kryn completely off guard. 20 ships were hit before they even knew they were under attack. Hulls crumpled. Ships tumbled out of formation. All ships evasive maneuvers. Krath screamed, "Return fire!" But the humans had chosen their battlefield carefully. This was their solar system. They knew every gravity well, every orbit, every hiding place. The Kryn were fighting in unfamiliar territory. Human ships came at them from multiple directions. From above the orbital plane, from below, from positions near Jupiter where they had been hiding in the massive planet's sensor shadow. They used the sun itself, attacking with Sol at their backs to blind Kryn sensors. The battle spread across the inner solar system. Near Mars, human fighters engaged Kryn cruisers in a deadly dance. The Kryn tried to use their superior energy weapons, but the human pilots were too fast, too aggressive. They had trained in Earth's skies, dodging missiles and enemy fire. Space was easier. Near Earth's moon, a squadron of Kryn destroyers tried to break through to attack the planet directly. They ran into the lunar defense grid, automated railguns, missile batteries, laser arrays. The moon had been turned into a fortress. Not a single Kryn ship made it past. In the asteroid belt, human heavy cruisers used the rocks themselves as weapons and cover. A Kryn battleship pursued the UEG Valiant into the belt, only to watch in horror as the human ship triggered charges on several asteroids. The rocks exploded, sending fragments in every direction. The Kryn ship with its lighter armor was torn apart. Supreme Warlord Krath watched his fleet being destroyed piece by piece. This was not how war was supposed to work. The concordant species fought at range with energy weapons and shields. Clean, orderly. The humans fought like animals. They used everything. Rocks, debris, the environment itself. They took damage that should have destroyed their ships and kept fighting. They rammed when they ran out of ammunition. They used tactics that risked everything for a chance at victory. "We need to retreat," his chief admiral shouted. "We have lost over half our fleet." "No," Krath roared. "We came here to punish them. We will not run from primitives." But the decision was taken out of his hands. The UEG Indomitable, repaired and reinforced, led a squadron of heavy cruisers straight at Krath's flagship. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge watching the massive Kryn vessel grow larger on the view screen. "All power to forward shields," he ordered. "Prepare boarding teams. We are taking that ship." The Indomitable fired everything it had. Railguns, missiles, plasma cannons. The Eternal Dominance's shields held, but barely. Then the Indomitable closed to point-blank range and launched its boarding craft. Krath felt the impacts as human marines breached his hull. He grabbed a weapon and led his personal guard to repel them. He was a warrior. He would not hide while his ship was invaded. He found the humans in a corridor outside the engine room. There were only 6 of them, but they wore powered armor that made them look like metal giants. They moved with coordinated precision, covering each other, advancing steadily. Krath fired his plasma rifle. The shot hit one Marine's armor and left a scorched mark. The Marine did not even slow down. Captain Chen led the boarding team. He saw the large Kryn warrior ahead, clearly someone important based on the ornate armor. He raised his hand, signaling his team to hold fire. "Surrender," Chen called out in the Kryn language. "Your fleet is broken. Your war is lost." Krath threw down his weapon in disgust. How did you defeat us?" "We had superior numbers. Superior ships." Chen removed his helmet, revealing his scarred face. "You fought us in our home. We know this system better than you know your own scales, and you made the mistake of thinking we would fight by your rules." Around them, the sounds of battle were fading. The Kryn fleet was surrendering or fleeing. Of the 180 ships that entered the Sol system, 143 were destroyed or captured. Only 37 escaped back to Kryn space. The human fleet had lost 34 warships. 12,000 people were dead or wounded. It was the bloodiest battle in human history. But Earth was safe. 3 months later, peace talks concluded. The Kryn Dominion agreed to return all conquered territories and pay reparations to Talveen Prime. Supreme Warlord Krath was tried for war crimes and imprisoned. Commander Zral, who cooperated with investigators, was released and became an advocate for peace. The Galactic Concordance formally recognized the United Earth government as a major power. 17 species requested defensive alliances with humanity. Admiral Vasquez retired to spend time with her family, though she remained an advisor to the UEG military. She had become a hero to 2 species. Captain Marcus Chen was promoted to admiral and given command of the new 4th Expeditionary Fleet. His first mission was to patrol the space between Earth and Talveen Prime, protecting both worlds. And on Talveen Prime, Miran accepted an invitation to visit Earth. She arrived on a transport ship, nervous and excited. Sarah Chen, now Earth's chief ambassador, met her at the spaceport. Together they traveled to Geneva, where Miran would speak at the first interspecies conference. But first, Sarah took her to see the ocean. They stood on a beach in California, watching waves crash against the shore. Miran wore a special suit that helped her handle Earth's gravity. But even with assistance, she moved carefully. "This is your world," Miran said, looking around in wonder. "It is beautiful, but I can feel how dangerous it is. The gravity, the storms. Even the sun feels more intense." Sarah nodded. "Earth is not gentle, but it is home. It made us who we are." Miran was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her since that first transmission. "Why did you really answer my message?" "We were strangers. You risked everything." Sarah looked out at the ocean, thinking about her brother risking his life in space, about the thousands who had died defending Earth, about the simple choice to help when someone asked. "Because a long time ago we were prey too," she said finally. "Weak creatures trying to survive on a world that did not care if we lived or died. We survived by working together, by protecting each other, by never abandoning our own. When someone cries for help, you answer. It does not matter if they are family or strangers. It is what makes us human." Miran felt tears forming. "Thank you. For everything. For answering. For fighting. For showing the galaxy that someone still cares." Sarah smiled and put a hand on the Talveen's shoulder. "You are welcome. And you are not a stranger anymore. You are our friend, our ally, and we protect our friends." Above them in orbit, human and Talveen ships patrolled together. A new fleet was forming, made up of multiple species united by a simple idea, that when someone needed help, you answered. That civilization meant protecting the weak, not debating while they died. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never assume a peaceful people cannot fight. And never ever back a Deathworld species into a corner, because when pushed too far, Earth did not just fight back. Earth brought the war to you, and Earth always protected its own.